Hi guys, my name is Marsha Gomes-Mckie. As promised, I did a workshop earlier today and the IT was not very stable, so I'm giving you the slides. So we're starting writing omits Caribbean folklore for today's bookshelves. This program is definitely about folklore, and as I begin, I want to talk about the session that we had today. We really looked at writing Caribbean folklore in a authentic, open way. Um, and a lot of times when people think about folklore, they think about stories from yesteryear. And they feel as if they have to honor those stories, or they feel as if to honor those stories, they can't change it. And what we discussed today is that the writers of yesterday wrote for the people of yesterday. They wrote for their time. They wrote for the situations of yesterday. Um, and today's writers, we are now the new scribes, and we have to think about the readers of today. The readers of today have different issues. There's loneliness, there's mental health, there's screen time, there's too much technology, there's working with the technology, working without the technology. And if we are writing stories that could only be understood by people 40, 50 years in the past, then we aren't doing a very good job of making sure that Caribbean folklore is remembered. Each set of writers have the ability to write Caribbean folklore for the readership of today. And it is not just the ability to write, it's that we have to do it. That is what that is why we write. We write so that we can reach the readers of today. So changing Caribbean folklore into Caribbean mythology is definitely something I want to see. But I don't just want you to change your stories. The stories must come. Stories must come. For example, a buck is known to like bananas and milk. So he may be eating bananas and milk 50 years ago, but now he's eating a banana milk smoothie. The lagahoos, he has a coffin that he goes everywhere with. That doesn't mean that in today's mythology he doesn't have a coffin chain that with some magic it could take the chain and make it bigger. So you have to look at the stories and look at the features of the stories and bring them today so that you doing may not be interested in pulling any children into the bushes and having them to go in the bush and play what? You're doing maybe in the mall, you're doing maybe on iPads, you're doing maybe in an arcade. So you're not really changing the essence of the story. What you're doing is changing the setting of the story. So you as a writer today have to be able to change the setting of the story and bring the essence of the folklore character so that it could touch the readers of today. So we're talking about changing Caribbean folklore into mythology. We have always been a very oral tradition, and now it's no longer oral tradition. It's on the computer, it's in books, and we are documented. It's a different way. It's not wrong. It's just different. Um, and that's how we get to mythology. I remember reading Greek mythology, um, the basic Greek mythology, and most of these people were murderers, they're rapists, they're adulterers. It's not really stories that for children or for even for adults you kind of cringe. But the writers of that era looked at the stories, they took all the features that they felt were marketable and they produced stories that pushed the mythology. So they didn't just say, okay, well, we going with this horrible story and whoever people figure it. No, they looked at the people of the generation, let's say, okay, we're gonna focus on Hercules, we're gonna focus on this one, we're gonna focus on that one, because we feel that they are more marketable, and we're gonna look at the goodness, the good that they do, not so much the evil. So what you create is up to you. So we also have to create a world of characters. So we have to look at separate characters under the category. We have to create a world of characters. So this is villains, heroes, not just, we have a lot of villains, but we have to create heroes as well. And neutral psychics, forces that could work. So it's not, if we leave it, if we just leave it, then what we have will be villains, and somebody else now have to figure out the heroes to beat our villains. We need heroes, we need villains, and we need in between. And we need to publish at least over 50 books in each genre every year. In children's book, we need to publish middle grade, we need to publish young adult, we need to publish romance, horror, thrillers. We need to have folklore touching every single genre. And we need to be open to film projects, be more in festivals, book readings. It's really making the folklore, um, making the folklore come alive. And by giving each character, you sit and you give each character a backstory, you give them the motivation for what it is they do when the day come, and you create powerful systems. You're creating this epic universe or Caribbean mythology or folklore verse, so that you know the characters that you have, and you develop stories for them, and you develop them in today's setting. Um, and yeah, I definitely say we need to publish at least 50 books a year, so that when the category comes up, for example, on Amazon, there's enough books in the category. Beyond the books, there's screen and there's stage, there's film projects, festivals, educational resources, games and apps are very important, games and apps, podcasts and audiobooks. So it's storytelling in every way you could tell a story. So you're touching everything and everyone. And why does it matter? It's really cultural empowerment. Mythology shapes the national pride and strengthens the Caribbean identity. We have a wealth of resources, and we need to just look at it and literally see what we can get out of it. We can get a whole multi-universe out of it, and it gives us global reach. Unique stories that resonate with the audience. Is worldwide. We are is hungry for diversity, and that's rooted in fantasy, and that's what we have. And then when all of that starts to happen, we start to do the books, and we start to film projects and do the festivals. It creates the creative economy, and then that's why you get funding, and then the government would be more interested in sponsoring things, and because now you're creating a creative economy that opens up jobs in writing, jobs in illustration, animation, game design, education. So the goal is not just to write a book, it's to have a lot of writers in the Caribbean writing about folklore. So you're creating an industry that everybody could live and thrive off of. Um, so I'm gonna go on. We're gonna go genre by genre. I'm gonna just look at 4 genres today, and we're gonna see how folklore we can match folklore to them. So the children's genre, books for ages 0 to 10. We usually have these types of books, which is the Anansi, Compare Lapan. This is a new book called Crab Got Crack on His Back. So we usually have children's book like this, but there's room for so much more. I'm not saying get rid of these books. These books are cultural identity. So we need to keep these books, and we need to document them, but we need to also go a little further and do more in children's book. These pictures represent 3 books that I'm working on. The first one, the water scene, is Mamadillo, saving some girls who got lost in a storm. And it fits with the character, even though the Mamadillo character is sometimes, I wouldn't say evil, but a little bit. She doesn't like people in her waters, but she isn't overly evil. She has her good points. So for the children's stories, we have to look at the good points of the folklore character, pull that out, and you focus in on that. Because for a children's book, you need to have a good ending. You need to have something that they learn. The picture on the end is Papa Boa doing what he does, which is helping the young boy and saving, I wouldn't say saving the day, but helping him. Maybe he got lost at night and he's helping him, taking care of his cot, his room until somebody could take care of him. And the one in the middle is the Mukojambi. This represents carnival folklore. Now, carnival folklore is a completely different folklore from traditional folklore. Carnival folklore is like the Mukojambi, the devils, the midnight robber, and stuff like that. All of these things have a story behind it, and you could launch a series on just carnival focused folklore, and then you can do like coloring books and activity sheets for that focuses on carnival, and carnival in the Caribbean is something big. So let's move on to another genre. The rise of folklore inspired middle grade and young adults in traditional publishing. So over the past 5 to 10 years, we've had Tracy Potte's Zombies, which I think she did 3 books, published between 2015 to 2020. Then we have Shakira Bowen's Josephine Against the Sea, and also Beware of the Heartman, which was also based on Caribbean folklore. We have Witches Steeped in Gold, which is published by HarperCollins. Bowen's book was published by Scholastic. And then we have Dania McLean. Her book is The Protector's Pledge. And there's another one that was published by Caribbean Reads. So you find that when you think about traditional publishing, the middle grade and young adult literature really is focused on that. And these books are very popular, and it is something that you could write for, most definitely. These 3 are my books. These are my young adult books. It's the Mystical Jack series, and I'm doing a 10-book series that focuses I want to touch on every single, I wouldn't say every folklore character, but most of the folklore characters. And in a book, one of the characters is usually a hero. We have the little villain. We have somebody who's kind of in between. He's not too much of a villain, but he's not a hero either. So I give the folklore character different personalities and different backstories, so that the kids will understand and they would be rooting for them. So this is another way that you could actually look at what you're doing and make sure and stick to your genre. Definitely stick to your genre. If the word count, stick to look at the design of the book, the size of the book, look at what sells in the industry, and format your book to match it. And we go into romance. Romance is the biggest genre for tales right now. This is a book study by Annie Moorfolk that I find was it finished like a romance should. A lot of times in the Caribbean, people send me books and they say, well, it has a romantic element. It's not a romance, but it is a romance. It's more of a thriller, but it's not a thriller. Your book have to, if you don't know what genre your book is, then it's really hard for somebody else to sell it. So you have to figure out what genre your book is. And an important rule for romance is that it must be a happily ever after or happily ever after for now. We can't have any end of the book, the 2 people don't stay together. We can't have that somebody dies or somebody gets kidnapped and the next one go away or something like that. That's not a romance. You've just written yourself out of the romance category. So doing when you're doing work or you're looking at a genre, research your genre properly and see what are the rules of the genre, because you don't want to go in and produce an entire book and then you say, you know what, it's not selling. It's not. It might not be. It's not selling. It's not because the book isn't written well. It's because the book isn't placed properly. The book is in the wrong genre. And for romance, people want a happily ever after, so they would not consider a book as a romance. I think there's a lot of potential in this genre, not just because it's the biggest genre, but it's because folklore is paranormal. And that paranormal angle is really big. That paranormal angle is really important and it's really big for sales. And if you could figure out your own paranormal world or your own paranormal universe or niche that's really interesting. You could get people behind you, like with it have the Omega race, and it have and then it have the vampires, and then it have the fairies, and then it have there's the lichens. So you can figure out your own separate paranormal angle, and that would be marketable. And then this one is horror or thriller. I'm always very surprised that there's not more horror. Like this book cover, this is deliberately a horror genre. So sometimes we write folklore, but we kind of afraid to write it too bad. We kind of afraid to write it too good. We kind of just somewhere in between, and we're not enough. So if you want to do romance, do romance. If you want to do a children's book, make it not scary. And if you want to make it scary, then make it scary and make it real scary, so that so it will be remembered. So when you look at that genre, you research a genre and you make sure the book fits the genre. So that's definitely something that I'm interested in people doing more of. Just focusing on your genre and fitting and being the best in that genre. Folklore is so many characters and so many opportunities for growth that you have to come with your A game. And don't be afraid to change the story. Don't be afraid to bring the story into the modern world. Don't be afraid to look at the characters and make the character a little different. Make it look a little different. If you could see behind me that papa boa I have there, looks very different from any papa boa, from most of the papa boa that you would see. But that is my vision of a papa boa. And most of the folklore characters are shapeshifters. So you have the opportunity to give them a new look without changing the features of the character, because they are shapeshifters. So they could shapeshift into a tall, handsome man. Papa Boa could shapeshift into a old man. Papa Boa could shapeshift into a little boy. Papa Boa could shift into an animal, a bird, a hawk, anything. So when you find out most of our folklore characters are shapeshifters, so you are able now to change the look of the character. Not because somebody have the character looking a certain way in a drawing that they did years ago that fits their story. That doesn't mean you have to take now their drawing to fit your story and feel that that's authentic or that's low. Folklore is owned by everybody in the Caribbean, and folklore is something that we all look at and we all can make an input in, because it keeps growing from generation to generation to generation. It keeps growing. There's also the Film and Folklore Festival. Look for those. There's opportunity to become a script writer as well as an author and branch off into film, um, as well as video games. I know Roblox has a platform that you can build a game. Why not build a game centered on folklore? There's so many opportunities where folklore isn't in, and you could actually be the first person to do a folklore-based game from Trinidad and Tobago. And all of these things you need to write it first. So think about what you want to do, um, and write. Definitely think about it and write. We'll have an upcoming event. Um, this event right in our midst, Caribbean Folklore for today's bookshelves and film, I would say. And we will look at specific ways to make your folklore stories work in a specific genre. You can publish and market your work successfully. We would look at many other in-depth issues and questions, and it definitely will come up before the end of the year in partnership with Caribbean Books Foundation and Trinidad and Tobago Writers Guild, so look out for that. And this is my book, City Caribbean Folklore Legends. It looks at all the folklore legends. I wouldn't say all, 30 folklore legends in the Caribbean. There are more, and it gives you information on what the character is about, the protection, the pronunciation of the name, and as you see in the book, there's these wonderful black outline pages, which is a marketing strategy that I have. It doesn't cost any more. Um, But I like to see folklore on black pages. You can actually have a book full of black pages and just black pages and white, and it would still be considered black and white, a black and white book. So it will be billed as black and white. So you have a lot to think about when it comes to folklore. You have a lot of ways you could stand out when it comes to marketing. And you could follow groups, check online. And if you are a writer and you are writing something folklore related, remember that you have the power, because you're a scribe of today, not so much to change the basic features, but to change the settings. And we all know when you change the setting, you get a completely different story. So I want you to think about folklore as your own. I want you to think of folklore as something that you can write, and not just say, okay, well, they've been writing this lagahoo dragon is coffin for 25 years, 25, 50 years. They've been writing the soucouyants, the old woman who come and pass in and sucking the blood all the time. They've been writing just these stories for so much and so much of years, and I don't want to touch it because I want it to be authentic, and I don't want to be the one to do it because I'm a little bit afraid of the backlash. There will be no backlash. What there will be is like, oh wow, you can do that? I didn't know that. I didn't know you could do that. You take the stories and you bring it into the 20 and bring it into this century. If you're doing a young adult novel, you need technology. So, because the children today relate to technology, you need the folklore. Papa Boa should have a nice little cabin, but when you push up in the cabin, he have internet and he have GPS, so he know where all the animals is, like a Jurassic Park thing going on. He know where all the animals is, he know where everything is. So you bring technology into your books and you do it effortlessly. You write and you write, you just change your settings and you write your stories and you don't second guess yourself. Folklore is so wonderful because it gives you the opportunity to do something new without having to ask permission. Stop asking permission. Who exactly are you going to ask? You're going in the forest and look for Papa Bo and ask him if you could write him a little taller than most people say he is. There's no permission. You are, as a Caribbean author, you take these stories. You are responsible. They have passed the baton, and you change the stories and you put it. You have to pass it to the next generation, and they will write the stories that they need to write. So all you need to focus on is to write the folklore stories that you need to write today. My name is Marsha Gomes-Mckie. I am the founder of Caribbean Books Foundation. I am the regional advisor for Caribbean South for the Society of Children Book Writers and Illustrators. I am the owner of a Jumbie Publishing House. I am an author and an illustrator, and I thank you for tuning in today. You can get me at mgomesmckie@gmail.com.